And now, good mic work commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
It is a beautiful August summer Saturday afternoon here on the YouTube channel. Welcome to your Winged Eagle Podcast for August the 17th, 2024. We are 1 week away from AEW All In, coming to us from the good old UK. AEW's on their way over there right now to do a Cardiff Dynamite, followed by, of course, the London All In 1 week from tomorrow. It's a busy week news-wise. We have a lot of results to get into. We have a lot of pay-per-view cards to look at. All In coming up, Bash in Berlin coming up in a couple of weeks. We have to pay our respects to yet another wrestling death here today. Lots of more free agency news, AEW stuff, Warner Brothers Discovery stuff. Adam Cole update is going to be included in today's notes as well. And just a lot of wrestling chatter. It's a pretty full day. My notes are long. I wasn't thinking that today's podcast was going to be super loaded, but the more I wrote down, the more I realized we had a lot to talk about today. So it's going to be a fun one. And I absolutely loved Dominic Mysterio's guest appearance on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast this week. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a lot of stuff. It's a beautiful day for a wingy. Glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for being here, and happy Saturday to you. Going to be a big weekend. We're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be here on Monday. I'll tell you all about that here in a second, but I'll do some shout outs and whatnot in the chat, give you guys a nice hello, and then we will dive into our topics today. Thank you very much for coming up 30 minutes earlier than normal. We try to do a 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific start time for these podcasts, but lately I've been doing them 30 minutes or even an hour earlier than normal. So thank you for always staying tuned and paying attention to when we go live here. And today should be a fun one. Let me say hello to whoever is here in the chat, because I do have a 2-hour curfew here. I got a time limit. I got to be out the door in 120 minutes to head to my other job. So whatever we talk about here today, I need to finish within a 2-hour span. So I don't want to waste too much of y'all's time today before we get into this, but I do want to say hello to our friends who are here in the chat so far. While I am doing that, massive favor to ask of you guys. Thumbs up button, smash that. Please, if you are not a subscriber, do that as well. Subscribers have just completely cut off since the beginning of the summer. This happens once a year. We just hit a dead spot. We will pick things back up. But until then, I need all the help I can get. So please keep subscribing. Please keep liking the videos and telling your friends about it. Memberships are open. Super chats are open. All the links you need downstairs in the description below. I want to say hello to our friends. My boy, Zane G, first one in the chat to say hello. We got Rodrigo is here. Rodrigo Martinez here as well. We have Mike Rouse. I see Tatanani. Good to see Brandon McNeil and Big J, some of the early channel members, chiming in. So as well as Sonic Plays and Isaac. Good to see y'all. Let me see. I see Damian Drain in the chat. We've got Gilbert Arbalo. We got Andy Linnell. David Brown. Always glad and happy to see you. Good evening, everyone in the chat. Hope you are having a good weekend. Meet my cousins from Canada next Saturday. Or next Sunday, excuse me. Have you never met these cousins before? That's pretty cool. William Cullen, good to see you. Good to see Maddie. Good to see William. Good to see Jose Lopez. And Max Pokebra is asking for 1,000 likes on this video, so you better help Max out on this, achieve his goal, because I always like it when Max achieves his goals. We've got the new one, Vontae, in the house chiming in with $5 for us. Thank you, my friend. What up, G? What do you think about Cena versus Austin at WrestleMania 41 for Cena's final Mania? I don't love it, to be honest. I mean, on paper, that's like a holy shit match, but do we need that? You know, Cena going on his retirement run, I think it should be mostly about Cena. You put somebody else in the ring with him, like a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's wrestled one match in 21 years. I feel like the focus is going to be more on the both of them, or more on Austin than it would be about Cena. Than it would be on Cena. And I think Cena's retirement tour, while I'm definitely hoping to get some really cool matches, I don't know if that's one that would really necessarily be on my list. Even when Cena was active, I never thought of him in Austin in a dream match scenario. I thought of him in Rock, but not really him in Austin. So it's one for me personally, Vontae, that I don't need. But I think Austin will always leave the door slightly cracked open on a return, but I just don't know if it would be against Cena. I'd rather see Austin and Punk than Austin and Cena, to be honest. Yo, we got Tomas in the house. What's up, man? Appreciate the 5 from you as well. Happy to finally be home for a stream. Hope you're doing well. Would you be intimidated by a man named Walter? Yes, I would. I liked Walter. I like Walter, all capital letters as well. Walter's my grandfather's name and my father's middle name. And I like the name Walter, so hell yeah, I would be intimidated by a man named Walter. Damn right. Denny Down Bad, Crazy J, anybody else who is saying hello in the chat, welcome. Thank you for being here. Happy Saturday to everyone. And this should be a good episode today because, like I said, lots to discuss. First things first, tomorrow night, we're going to be back for our classic pay-per-view watch-alongs, and we're going to be transitioning to WCW land tomorrow, and we're going to watch Road Wild. Yes, I always was adamant about never watching one of these pay-per-views because I think they all suck in Sturgis, but I looked at the card for 1997, and it did not look bad. So, SummerSlam has come and gone. We've kind of gotten through all of our SummerSlams for the year, so we're going to pivot now and do a WCW pay-per-view tomorrow because 1 week from tomorrow, we're going to be here watching All In together. So tomorrow's classic watch-along will be Road Wild 1997. The link to tomorrow's watch-along is already up at the top of the page. Latest content playlist right there at the top of the channel. You will see it. Give it a like, save it for tomorrow, and join us and wear your biker gear. Put on a leather jacket, shirtless. You can go shirtless if you want, like go shirtless with like a sleeveless leather vest. That would be great. Maybe a little hat. Yeah, dress up tomorrow for the occasion. It should be fun, and maybe I will too. We will be here most likely on Monday night as well to review Monday Night Raw. I very much enjoyed last week's Raw with what we saw on that show, as well as the week before, right after SummerSlam. So Raw's been on a little bit of a roll lately. We'll see if they keep that momentum going on Monday, but we will be here to talk about it unless something crazy happens and I opt not to. I will also be here with All In predictions this week. I'm looking at Thursday. So Thursday, I got to decide what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to drop a recorded, uploaded video. Just release it to you guys. But if I have a busy week and I can't get it done, we're going to do it live. Either way, Thursday, after Dynamite, I wanted to wait until Dynamite happens just to finalize my thoughts on the card and the pay-per-view and the storylines, directions, and I think Wednesday's Dynamite in Cardiff is going to be awesome. So on Thursday afternoon, we'll come up here. You will see me in some form. I'll either be live or I will be recorded, and I will predict all of AEW All In. 1 week from today, we will be here for a podcast the day before All In, and then 1 week from tomorrow, back watching a pay-per-view together, only this time a current pay-per-view, All In from Wembley Stadium. 1 week from tomorrow, join us for that. So that's all you have to really know about our upcoming schedule. Now, we can jump into some wrestling news, and one of the things that I forgot to do today with my wrestling news notes is I usually, or after I write down everything I want to talk about, I organize it in which order I want to talk about it, and I forgot to do that. So I am going to basically go in the order I have it here, and hopefully we will not be skipping around too much, but I do want to open with a quick update on Adam Cole. Now, we've been wondering where Adam Cole has been. He has not wrestled in almost a year, I believe it's been. I think it was early September of last year was the last time he was in the ring. And he already missed significant time since being in the company as well with the concussion stuff. So I've really been bummed out about how Adam Cole's career has gone, and none of this is his fault. Adam Cole is one of the nicest, best guys in the wrestling business. We wish him nothing but the best, but not having him around and on TV regularly has been a little bit frustrating from a fan's perspective. I really wish he was able to be healthy and could be on TV and be utilized because he's just too good of a talent for fans not to be able to enjoy. Well, Fightful Select had an update on Adam Cole yesterday. Here's what they had to say. They learned that Adam Cole was backstage at this past week's Dynamite, so that is good. And while it isn't out of the ordinary for injured talent to be at AEW tapings, Cole had been taken off the road a number of months ago as traveling seemed to be slowing down his progression towards an in-ring return. Cole had been factored into the Undisputed Kingdom faction and, all that story with MJF as well. Perhaps a more promising sign of return was word that emerged from backstage was that Cole was set to resume training for a hopeful return as soon as next week. Cole last wrestled on September 3rd. Wow, September 3rd, 2023. Shortly after that, he sustained an ankle injury in a freak accident during a show closing segment that ended up heavily derailing AEW's creative plans, which Cole was heavily factored into. So if rumblings, since he was backstage this week, if there are some rumblings that he is going to be training to prepare for an in-ring return, that is great news. We have gone far too long without Adam Cole in the ring, and hopefully he will be 100%. I look at Adam Cole now in a lot of the same way as I look at CM Punk. In WWE, I'm just sitting here biting my nails, hoping that CM Punk can stay healthy and he can actually have a run. And the fact that he got through and on the other side of that SummerSlam match with Drew McIntyre, unscathed. Now it looks like he's setting up a strap match for the next PPV with this guy. That is a good sign. I'm glad that Punk, at least for the first match, his body has held up. And when Cole gets back in the ring in AEW, I'm going to be looking at him a lot in the same way as Punk. Just fingers crossed, please stay healthy, because if he can get rolling and get in a run and get in a groove, I feel like he has just got infinite stuff to offer to AEW and can be a huge part of their main event scene if he can just get healthy and get rolling, much like Punk in WWE. If he could just get rolling, go down the hill, get the snowball going, then I think, he could have one of the best final runs of all time if everything goes absolutely perfectly. And I hope the same for Adam Cole. Really miss him. Really want to see him back. Promising news coming out of AEW this week regarding Adam Cole. More AEW news. Big news this week regarding the future of AEW All In. Of course, last year, they set some attendance records in Wembley Stadium. They're going back this year, and they're still, even though they're not going to pull the number that they did last year, they're still going to be looking at close to 50,000 people in attendance for next Sunday's show. That's tremendous. However, AEW All In 2025 will be moving out of the London area, away from Wembley Stadium, and coming here to the States, to Arlington, Texas. July 12th, Globe Life Field. This is where the Texas Rangers play baseball, and that is going to be the site of All In 2025. Now, Tony Khan was a guest on the Dan Le Batard show this week as well, and he did say that AEW will return to the UK in 2025. Next year, it just won't be for All In. And the working plan right now is for AEW All In to return to Wembley Stadium in 2026. So if you kind of read between the lines here, I mean, you can look at this two ways. AEW has talked about moving All In to the States at some point in the future, maybe not permanently, just having one of their shows here. So we knew that Wembley wasn't going to be the lifetime home for All In. But the fact that they're leaving there for 1 year and Tony Khan plans to return to All In at Wembley in 2026, you're like, why would they just take one random year off? Well, it could be because WWE is planning to bring SummerSlam to Wembley Stadium. That's a big possibility. We don't know. We know where SummerSlam will be in 2026. That will begin the two-night SummerSlams. But there is a chance the two-night SummerSlams could start as early as next year because we don't have a location set for SummerSlam in 2025. Last time SummerSlam was in London was at the old Wembley Stadium in 1992 in the great Bret Hart and British Bulldog main event that is immortalized in history. So if WWE is planning on most likely going to Wembley Stadium for SummerSlam, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for All In to be there as well. That's going to be two stadium wrestling shows from two different companies in 1 month. I'm sure the fans would be down, but I don't know if everybody's going to be able to go to both of these shows or be able to afford to go to both of these shows, or fans might choose one or the other. And I'm not sure if either company really wants to worry about one company taking ticket sales away from them. Even if you're WWE, you could have some people that are going to say, no, I'm going to go to All In instead. So neither company is really going to probably want two stadium wrestling shows in the same city in the same month. So if AEW feels like there's a very good chance WWE is going to be bringing SummerSlam to Wembley Stadium next year, they get the hell out of there for a year, put All in Texas, and then go back to London the following year. That sounds like what might be happening. It might be AEW getting out of the way for SummerSlam, letting WWE have Wembley, and then they come back in the following year. If that's what's happening, you know who the winner is not only the fans, but the fans in the UK, the fans in London and in that area who now are getting All In back-to-back years, then a SummerSlam, and then All In again. WWE is a lot more open now to running international PLEs. We've seen that a lot. We have one coming up here in just a couple of weeks. And we do know that WWE has recently spoken to London officials about bringing WrestleMania there as well. So if you are living in England, living anywhere in the UK, and travel distance to these places, and you're a wrestling fan, you are getting some long overdue big shows. And I'm happy that those are going, that these shows are becoming more frequent, because you can always bank on the most jacked possible crowds. That's one of my favorite things about any wrestling event over there, is that the crowd is always balls in and all in, no pun intended. And I love that. So that's good news, and it's interesting news for AEW, because now coming to Texas, Arlington, that is an outdoor stadium, right, where the Rangers play. So this is going to be another kind of stadium show. The setup for this should look cool. I really do like baseball stadium wrestling shows. They generally look pretty cool. I would love it if AEW did the dugout entrances like WWE does for the Rumbles and whatnot. That would be pretty cool as well. So we will see, what kind of attendance they draw next year. Now, Texas is a good home for AEW, a good place for AEW. The fans there do enjoy the product. They have made a little homestead for themselves there, I think, in Arlington for the Collision tapings, right? Recently. So they do like the area. And I think that they're confident that that market will bring a good amount of fans. And I think the setup and the visual of the whole thing can look very good, but AEW still has to stay the course. They still have to continue to provide good television, quality television, in order to draw these crowds that they're going to need next year. And with a lot of the TV media rights deal still kind of up in the air, planning these big stadium shows when you're not even 100% positive you're going to have cable TV to air your product on is pretty wild. But All In Arlington next year, looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing how all of that looks, and really looking forward to seeing if SummerSlam is actually going to go to Wembley Stadium next year. That would be sweet. That would be sweet if they did. And speaking of those media rights deals, the AEW media rights deal that Tony Khan has been teasing, even last week, Tony Khan, I think, tweeted that the biggest announcements in AEW history and AEW's history are forthcoming. And Tony Khan says that a lot. And it feels like every time the renewal for the media rights deal comes up, he speaks with very high confidence. Tony Khan has been teasing for months that this deal is imminent, that it's going to be a big, great, wonderful deal, that they should be getting everything that they are hoping to get from Warner Brothers Discovery. But there's also a lot of internal turmoil in WBD. They just lost the NBA, which they took them to court for. And then most recently, with David Zaslav kind of coming under fire a little bit, because, over the past, 1 to 3 years, the stock price has dropped, 70%. They are $40 billion in debt. They lost the NBA, took them to court over it. And as I think somebody asked me on Monday's podcast, the network cable assets that Warner Brothers Discovery owns were grossly undervalued by about $9 billion. So you combine the stock price dropping, they lose the NBA, they overvalued themselves by, nearly $10 billion. And as I talked about last week too, and we've been saying this a lot in the last year or two, that cable is dying. And this is a really good indicator here that these cable networks, they're not worth what they used to. Content consumption has changed. And the fans, the tribal fans and whatnot who pay attention to ratings, they still live in 1998. They're looking at AEW's numbers and comparing that to 1998 WCW. It's not the same. Cable ratings don't really mean much at all. They're still great to tout. When you pull a good number, you pull a good demo, WWE and AEW, hey, look what we did, guys, look what we did, but it's not the same. My television rating from me, wrestling is not even known that I've watched it, in like 20 years, or maybe not quite that long, but I've been streaming for as long as I've been able to stream. And, ratings and DVR and digital recordings and things like that, YouTube, online stuff, you can consume content so many different ways now that it's just not cable TV and that's it. Now, I still think we're not to the point yet where you don't need cable TV. We're getting there. Cable is dying, but I still think that even though all wrestling, I expect WWE and AEW to all land 100% on streaming sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, we aren't quite there yet. Maybe even 3 to 5 years. I don't think we're quite there yet. I still think cable is necessary, and I think that AEW very much needs to try to stay on TBS and TNT if they can. And that's really never been something that I've been too worried about. My main concern and my main worry, or wish, I should say, not worry, but wish with the new rights deal, when and if it ever gets signed, is that it includes streaming. And that's something we've been talking about for 2 or 3 years now, about the possibility of AEW streaming their content on Max, having their pay-per-views available there, having their video library available there. They got all this Ring of Honor footage as well that they could use and have available to consumers. As a wrestling fan, I would love that. And that's what I'm hoping and have been hoping for the past year or so, that when AEW signs their new media rights deal, that it includes some streaming. I've never really been worried about them not being able to re-up and keep Dynamite on TBS and Collision on TNT. Never really worried about that. I'm still not. But based on everything that's going on internally in Warner Brothers Discovery, it does make you a little bit nervous. Now, also yesterday, it was announced that Warner Brothers Discovery chairman Kathleen Finch is going to retire, and Channing Dungey is going to be tapped as her successor. Now, Dungey already currently serves as the company's CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery's TV group, and will oversee the networks when Kathleen Finch retires. So she's basically just going to have the oversight of the networks added to her already existing duties. Don't know if this has too much to do with what's going on behind the scenes, but when you hear about turmoil and then you hear about somebody voluntarily deciding they're just going to retire, it could be a little murky and messy right now internally in Warner Brothers Discovery, which is just horrible timing when you've got AEW here trying to renegotiate these TV rights. So Tony Khan has been very adamant that a deal is imminent, a deal is going to get done. He's been confident. He's been showing no signs of fear or worry or concern in that regard whatsoever. And I have been taking him at his word. My belief is that he knows that they're going to re-sign. I think the details are in the financials. How much money we're talking about here, that's probably what's left to really negotiate here, unless there has been no offer to put them on any sort of streaming platform, and that's what Tony Khan's trying to get done. So I would assume it's either financial or it's streaming related, those type of details. But in terms of Warner Brothers Discovery wanting to keep AEW around on TNT and TBS, of course they do. Those programs are number 1, number 2, number 3 on cable every single night, what's left of cable, and they just lost the NBA. So, you lose the NBA and you lose AEW programming. What the hell do you have to prop up this network? So I'm not really concerned about AEW possibly leaving them, but I am concerned about them getting everything they want financially and content distribution-wise, specifically the streaming stuff. As a wrestling fan, I don't give a shit how much money they give Tony Khan. I don't care. He's a billionaire. He's got so much money. I'm not interested in what kind of profit the company's making. I don't care. I want to be able to watch their product. That's what's most important to me. So when that news comes out and we finally get some sort of a deal here, the first thing I'm going to want to read about is what does the deal include regarding where I can watch AEW's content. I'm going to want to know that first. Then after, I'll look at all the financial fucking numbers. But I'm just concerned about where I can watch the pro wrestling that I like to watch. And it sounds like things are just a little sketchy right now in Warner Brothers Discovery Land, and hopefully that will not negatively impact AEW too much in terms of their media rights negotiations. We will keep our eye on that. I'm ready to get this deal done, though, because I feel like we've been talking about, I definitely know we've been talking about it all year. I know in January, I remember saying on the podcast that I felt like we'd get an announcement like in a month. Meanwhile, you could have gotten pregnant and had a baby, and we still got no deal done. So we will just have to wait and see what happens. It is possible as well that Tony Khan is saving up everything for this weekend to have a big blockbuster week in AEW. They're going to be in Cardiff for Dynamite, which should be a big show. All In, even though I think a lot of fans feel like it lacks some heat from maybe the previous year, there is still, the core matches, the key matchups on the card, I'm very much looking forward to. And we're also sniffing out some potential returns, maybe some surprises, maybe a Ricochet, maybe a Jamie Hayter, some things that could happen that could be very exciting. It could be possible, and Tony Khan is one to do this. This is not really something WWE or Vince would do. But I could see Tony Khan coming right out to the ring at All In and announcing to the 50,000 people in attendance and all of us on pay-per-view that they've signed a new media rights deal. That's kind of Tony Khan's style. WWE's more of a press release type of company. Tony Khan's like, let me come out to the ring and scream my announcement at everybody. And he just might do that. So we'll see where we sit in about a week's time. After All In comes and goes, we will see if we have any news this week regarding AEW's future on Warner Brothers Discovery and potentially a streaming platform. We will see. More fun in AEW land. It's always fun over there, isn't it, guys? We've got some Lucha Brothers and Penta updates for you. Now, this whole situation has been a mess. Earlier this week, our friend Ibu of Wrestle Purists did imply that Penta is expected to be in Orlando next week. Now, he did not specify that meant he was going to be at the PC, just that he was going to be in Orlando. Penta then responded to this report on Twitter by saying, please stop posting fake news. My present is AEW. Okay. Fightful Select had an update on this yesterday. Here's what they had to say. Fightful reported last week that Penta openly told some close to him that he'd already had conversations with WWE this summer and indicated he didn't want to go through NXT and that he and his brother Phoenix were a package deal. We're told by WWE sources that the latter wouldn't be an issue as they've long been interested in Phoenix anyway. Penta pushed back on reports of such, but numerous sources close to Penta also said he claimed that he'd be in Orlando this week, but didn't specify if it was at the PC or just a visit. Penta does have a booking in Mexico on Thursday. From the AEW side, there were several who said they suspected something like this had happened, but still were shocked to see it in print. They'd offered Lucha Brothers a new deal that was supposedly the same as what Penta has told people WWE is willing to provide. Keep in mind, various details are claims from the talent directly, and because of the contractual nature, haven't been confirmed. Among those claims from Penta to friends include the claim that his deal has already expired. He remains on the AEW roster page, and there were several within AEW that said if his deal hasn't actually expired. Or, I'm sorry, he remains on the AEW roster page, and there were several within AEW that said if his deal actually hasn't expired, the company would tack on injury time to both. A claim internally was that the Lucha Brothers didn't want to do business in the appropriate ways that many exits from the company and other companies in general have done in the past. Multiple sources in AEW believe Penta pushing back on the reports so his brother will be able to leave AEW without contractual hurdles. So, based on this information, Ibu of Wrestle Purists has plenty of contacts. There's plenty of people that he talks to. He is a credible source. Same thing with Fightful Select. What this sounds like mostly to me is that Penta needs to stop running his fucking mouth. And it's just like, some of these Mexican wrestlers, they're kind of funny. They don't give any fucks, One of my favorites was always Conan. The way just Conan... Like, I don't really listen to his podcast because I hate Disco Inferno, but like if you ever hear Conan speak, I love the way he talks because he's just like, you know, like in AEW when like Andrade was talking to Shivani and he's like, yeah, how you know? You know, Conan is just very matter of fact. And there's just there's very few fucks to be given. And Penta just running his mouth, you know, I think this is just, you know, him not understanding. You got to maybe be a little bit professional here and just keep your fucking mouth shut. And if you're on the verge or the cusp of going to the big time, going to WWE and getting this big money deal, try to bite your tongue. I know it's exciting. I know you want to shout it from the rooftops, but you might not want to be just advertising this to everybody who can then circle back and tell people in the industry, and then things get out and get leaked. And I very much believe now, after reading these various reports over the past few weeks, that the Lucha Brothers are as good as gone from AEW, and they absolutely intend to go to WWE. What I think happened is Penta started running his mouth. This stuff got out, and then realized this could negatively affect my brother, who's trying to get out from the company, and out of, if they wanted to be spiteful, this is something we've seen from WWE many times in the past. Just look up Brody Lee and Rusev and so many other people that they've done this to. Out of spite, they could just add time to his contract. Look, they're not wanting to do business. They don't want to do any jobs. They're already telling friends. They're going to WWE. They've already had conversations with WWE while they're under contract to us. Tony Khan just said this week that he fully believes the contract tampering is still going on. He believes that it's happening. And, you know, that's a whole nother side issue. You know, the contract tampering. I think both companies to a degree will do this because it's not like the 1980s. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody text messages. You can technically contract tamper through 3 or 4 removed parties. You know, you don't think Will Ospreay had anything to do with getting Ricochet to AEW? Come on now. So even though you might not be able to speak directly to company officials, there's no law saying you can't talk to your friends. There's no law that says you can't text your friends. Hey, so-and-so at NXT, talk to Shawn Michaels. Ask him, hey, well, my contract's up. You want me? Hell yeah. Tell him yeah. You know, that type of thing. You know, so it's impossible to police. So I feel like contract tampering, these type of things are just going to happen. I think as long as wrestlers are not having meetings with company officials while under contract, which makes me wonder what the hell Christian was doing with Nicholas's father, that referee, months ago, who they met up and had lunch together, and the WWE merchandise was on the table or something like that. They had a WWE tag on them or something. I'm like, what are they talking about here? So as long as there's nothing like that going on, you can't really stop people from like text messaging. But I think in Penta's case, he maybe got a little bit ahead of himself. Now news got out that he didn't want to, and now he's like, it's fake news. My present is AEW. No, your future is going to be WWE, and I think you're just trying to finish up with AEW without any BS. And he might have realized that Phoenix, and we don't know the contract status. Penta, his contract might be up, it might not be. He's still on the AEW roster page, so you would think that if contractually he was no longer under contract to the company, they would remove him, unless that would raise a huge red flag to fans. Oh, he's gone, but Phoenix is still there. So it could be that his contract is up, Phoenix is not, and they're trying to wait that out. And then when Penta ran his mouth and this shit got out online, and you already know Tony Khan is pissed about contract tampering, just out of spite, he could add money to to Phoenix's deal, just to stop the brothers from going over there. I'm not a fan of pettiness, even though Tony Khan absolutely has a right to do that. You don't want to be that guy. You know, I understand Tony Khan's frustrations when it comes to that. I wouldn't understand anybody's frustrations when it comes to that. But one of the biggest, as a fan, one of the biggest turnoffs to me from WWE back in the day, not even back in the day, but just, you know, in recent years when Vince was still around, is how many wrestlers they would jerk around. How many wrestlers would ask wrestlers they weren't using, you know, like Mustafa Ali. Or you guys can give me more examples in the chat of people that FTR or Revival, maybe they were using them a little bit more, but wanted their release, asked, look, it's just not working for us here. We would like to be released. And they say no. And then they just jerk you around, or they add more time. And it's even more frustrating when it's talent they're not using, who aren't doing anything. And I think of Brody Lee. I think of Luke Harper, who was, in his 40s now. And I swear he just sat and treaded water and did nothing in that company for 2 years, wasting the best years of his life when he could be out there. You have a window when you're a pro wrestler. You have a window of years, a finite amount of time that you can do this and make money for your family. And when you are being held hostage, by another promotion for no other reason other than spite. It's one thing if you're a top star and the company's like, look, I just can't let you go. I understand that. I wouldn't blame Triple H or Tony Khan if they had to make that decision about a top guy. But when it comes to, certain talent, if they want out, just let them go. I can understand Malachi. I can understand Miro. They came in. They wanted to sign these big long-term deals. You want to hold them to that. I get that. But this situation, if their contract is coming up, if Phoenix contract is up in a few weeks, Tony Khan realizes that he could, if he wanted to, add time to it. I would not do that. I would respect him more if he did not. I don't blame Tony Khan whatsoever if he's pissed or irritated or aggravated at WWE fucking around with his talent. I get that. But how's it going to help you? Just to prolong the inevitable, prolong Phoenix from going to WWE to join his brother, adding time on. Then he just waits that out. Then he goes there. Now they're pissed. Now they're talking shit about you in podcasts and stuff. I just don't think there's an upside to it. These guys want to go. You should let them go. In terms of the reports of them maybe not wanting to do business, the business is different too. There were times that in the territory days and even the WCW and WWE wars that when you leave and you jump ship or your contract is up and you leave the company, you go out on your back, you get jobbed out, you lose a big feud, you lose a big match, a loser leaves town match or something like that. A lot of times you lose on your way out. We've been seeing that less and less lately. And maybe from the Lucha Brothers perspective, they don't want to job out right before they're about to jump to WWE, but I don't really think that would matter to them. I think they could lose 3 or 4 matches in a row and leave AEW and show up in WWE and still be the Lucha Brothers. I don't think they'd be damaged in any way at all. So them not wanting to do business is part of business. It's part of them protecting themselves, their characters, and their legacies and whatnot. I totally get that. So there's not really a right or wrong answer, I don't think. I think it's situational. I think it depends on the situation. If nowadays, especially in AEW, if they do allow wrestlers a little bit more of a say in what they do than WWE, these wrestlers are in a position to reject creative ideas or say, no, I'm not going to go out there and do a job, or I'm not going to lose, or we need to do it this way instead, or whatever. I'm not really sure on the surface if this is something that I can blame Penta and Phoenix for. You're trying to look out for yourself. You're trying to look out for yourselves and your tag team and your future. So, wanting to keep yourself protected on the way out the door, I can understand, but at the same time, if you are leaving, I think you should leave the right way and do whatever the company asks of you when you go. And I think it would be best for everybody, for the business and for the fans, for as often as possible, if somebody leaves AEW or leaves WWE, to try to leave without any negative feelings, without some misunderstandings or problems on the way out the door. Let your contract run up, do whatever the company asks you. That way, when you leave, you don't burn a bridge. You have the opportunity to come back one day. And whenever your former employee is asked about you, they have good things to say about you. We loved having him here. We're sorry that he left. We wish he was still here. He was always a great asset for us when he was here or she was here, and we'd love to have him back one day. That's keep it professional. That's the way I think I would want it to be if I was a wrestler or if I was working, for one of the big companies, because you never know what the future holds. What if the Lucha Brothers go to WWE and within 6 months they realize that they made a huge mistake and they fucking hate it there and they get themselves fired or released or something? Can they go back to AEW now based on the way they left? If they would have left on good terms and there weren't any bad feelings or contract tampering crap going on, it might be easier. I just wouldn't want to burn any bridge at all. If I was in a wrestler's position, I would try to leave if I could. Sometimes things happen that's beyond your control and misunderstandings take place and bad feelings are harbored or whatever. But if at all possible, I would want to leave on good terms. So We will see when and if the Lucha Brothers are going to be turning up in WWE. And when they do, it should be interesting to see them there. It should. I'm kind of excited for it. We'll see if they're going to try to keep them a tag team if they go there, or if they're going to try to make a single star out of Phoenix. We just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Another messy situation. It seems like the only kind AEW has. Let me see if I have any more AEW news. No, it doesn't look like I do. Next thing I want to get into is Dominic Mysterio, Dom, on Impulsive. Oh my God. I think it was Monday night on the Raw review. I honestly said to you guys, I'm like, look, I'm kind of too old to like have favorite wrestlers and shit like that now. I have favorites. I have lots of guys I like, but I don't really have my Bret Hart, like I did when I was younger and stuff. But if somebody put a gun to my head and say, tell me your favorite wrestler, current favorite wrestler right now, or I'm going to shoot you, I would say Dominic Mysterio. And then Dominic goes and just proves my case and makes my case even stronger this week when he was a guest on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast. And this was so good. Dominic I think he's like almost unintentionally hilarious. Like he's a funny dude, but I'm not even sure if he means to be as funny as he is. And there were a few tidbits on this podcast that were so great. First thing I want to talk about is when they were talking about WWE's move, or WWE Raw's move to Netflix next year in 2025, which, as we know, starts in January. And that has sparked a lot of speculation and discussion here on this podcast and on social media about what WWE is going to do when they get there. Because one thing we know about Netflix is that there's no commercials and you can do whatever you want. You can swear and curse, and there's no standards and practices to adhere to like there would be on a cable station where they're censoring you and muting your curse words and things like that. So all that shit's going to be out the door for Netflix. Also, no commercials is going to be interesting unless they incorporate their own commercials, like how they do the video packages on the PLEs for people who have premium Peacock tiers, things like that. So it might be something like that, because I think there's also different tiers of Netflix. I think whatever the highest one is. So there might be some ad stuff to worry about, but for the most part, we should be experiencing a 3-hour commercial-free Raw every fucking week. And that's going to be pretty interesting. But in terms of the content and how far the content is going to be allowed to go, they were speculating on how salacious it could get. And when it comes to that, I don't know if necessarily we're going to be seeing anything too over the top, because WWE, at the end of the day, regardless of what platform they're on, still have their core audience, and they still want to be a family show. So here's what one of the quotes Dominic said about Raw moving to Netflix and how far they might take the content. He says, and I quote, "I think people are going to expect us to go in there and just first episode of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. I think people are going to expect, freaking blood and tables everywhere, titties, like Edge and Lita, where they had the live sex show. I'm sure people are going to expect things like that, but I feel like in order for stuff like that to be special and meaningful, you can't have it all the time. It's got to come like an RKO out of nowhere. It's like you don't expect it, and then it's like, boom, titty." I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited for WWE Monday Night Titties every Monday night. That should be fun. But no, I don't really think that we're going to see titties. I don't think we're going to see, they might push the envelope and do something crazy. You got to remember who's in charge of creative these days, Triple H. Imagine if Triple H, when he was in DX, had no rules. Imagine what Triple H and Shawn would have been doing in 1997 if Raw was on Netflix. Okay. So I think that Triple H is definitely going to have some ideas. He's going to have some envelope pushing segments that he's going to have some fun with the freedom that he has on Netflix that he doesn't have on cable TV. But you don't want to alienate any of your audience either. You don't want to jeopardize the audience that you have acquired over the past, few years, especially some of the younger kids, by putting more raunchier or salacious or more adult-oriented content on television for parents to potentially cock block their kids from watching. A lot of fans a lot of the angriest fans, what I've noticed about wrestling fans these days, I've talked about this a lot, the angriest fans that were mad at John Cena and the Fruity Pebble stuff and the TVPG, those are the fans that weren't allowed to watch the Attitude Era. See, I was in my 20s. I got to experience all that and loved it. They were little. Their parents either didn't let them watch it or made them go to bed before it came on, or whatever the case was. It was harder for them to consume the content because they were kids. Once they grew up and they were old enough to make their own decisions, now they got Fruity Pebble Barney running the show, and it pissed them off, and they were loud, obnoxious, and dumb for 10 years about it. So you don't want that to happen again, where you get a bunch of parents all fucking uppity, and start preventing their kids from watching the show. I think WWE is going to have some fun with the freedoms that they now have, but they're not going to go overboard. It's not going to be a return to 1997. It's not going to be titties and bra and panty matches and mud matches and, Vince loves cock and all that stuff that they were doing. I don't think it's going to be raunchy or salacious or juvenile just for the sake of it. We're not going to be seeing HLA, that type of thing. They're going to throw some shit at us, I think, but it's not going to be like over the top crazy. The biggest thing I'm happy about, not believe it or not, but understandably, I think the biggest positive to WWE being on Netflix is that you're not going to have to worry about crowd censoring. Now, even though I don't think WWE is going to be dropping F-bombs on Netflix, if they do, I suppose they're going to go uncensored, but they still might try to censor it. But I don't think the talent is going to be told, hey, in your promos, say anything you want. There's no way. But when it comes to the crowd chanting, a lot of times they will chant, fuck you so-and-so, or whatever, and Fox is the worst. But even on USA, you hear that stuff edited. And I think crowd censoring being a thing of the past for Monday Night Raw is going to be a huge help to preserve the integrity of these segments, where you don't have, the microphone going in and out trying to censor the crowd who's chanting some sort of curse word at the heel in the ring. So the crowd censoring being gone, at least hopefully, that's going to be the biggest asset to me going to Netflix. Otherwise, I don't really expect the content to change that much, other than a few things here or there. They might be able to have the same, I guess, curse word quota or level that maybe AEW has. They love to say shit on TNT. I think we'll hear shit sometimes on Netflix as well. But in terms of WWE going back to the Attitude Era type of content, no way, that's not happening. But I'm excited as hell for Monday Night Titties coming up this January. And then they also asked, God, Dominic is just the best. I want to be best friends with Dominic. He's so great. He lives in my city. I need to run into this feller one of these days. Logan Paul's stupid ass co-host then asked Dominic, he goes, who would you pick in real life? Liv Morgan or your real life wife? And Dom looks at him like, my wife, bro. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And here's what Dominic said then after being asked about who he would pick, and asked about being able to separate real life from his performing job. And basically, how his wife feels about everything. And Dominic said, and I quote, she's the best. I do what I do on TV. And he goes, and last week, he goes, who was it? He said, when Rhea Ripley licked my face, the first text I got from her was, quote, there's a tarantula in our garage. So obviously these things don't really bother her. He goes on to say that she understands the difference. He says that when he's on TV and he's Dirty Dom and I come home to her, I'm her husband, Dominic. Rhea Ripley came to the wedding and it was great. We all had a good time. The first time she met Rhea was actually at WrestleMania 2 years ago in LA. It's like you've got your work wife meeting your wife, and it's like, you don't know, you just want to know what's going to happen, right? So these transcripts are in Dom voice, but you can kind of get the picture here. Obviously, he is a performer. His wife seems ultra cool, and she's a cute girl. She's a totally hot woman. They've been together since Dominic was 14. They've been together a long time, and they're childhood sweethearts. They're married. They're delusionally happy. And I saw another like social media post that was getting a lot of traction on Twitter the other day about, you know, a picture of Dominic and Liv, and somebody wrote under it, man, I don't know how Dominic's wife can let him do that. And she's got to be a lot more understanding than most women and whatnot. And I'm like, does nobody have any trust anymore? You know, I know wrestling and isn't exactly like being an actor, but it kind of is. You're playing a role. You are performing. And the fact that society and just fans in general are of this belief that every relationship is just loaded with distrust shows their lack of experience in relationships. This wouldn't be a problem for me and Elizabeth. If she had some job where she had to kiss some dude and pretend to be in love with some dude and she was being paid millions of dollars a year to do it, I'd be cool with it. And I'd expect the same from her if the roles are reversed. It's no different than when you're acting. Think about how many actors have to get full balls ass butt naked and do sex scenes with each other, and they're both married to other people. It's what you do. You're performing. It's your job. You are doing your job. You're going out there and being paid to do a job. You've got one of the best jobs in the world. And it's a storyline involving another woman. Think another woman. Think of all the movies, the TV shows, the soap operas, all the other forms of entertainment with people in love, having sex scenes, kissing, portraying married couples who are all not in real life married to each other. They're married to other people. This is not weird, uncommon, odd. I think if you're in a trusting relationship with someone who loves you and who you love, none of this should be an issue at all. So it cracks me up how fans can watch Dominic and Liv Morgan and be like, oh, I don't know how his wife can stand that. I'm like, well, I would just hope that they're mature people who could. It's just, that's his job. I know it might be weird, but if you have ever been in a trusting relationship before, put yourself in that position and you can say pretty confidently that, yeah, I'd more than trust my spouse to be in that situation because there is trust, you know? And so people assuming things about other people, assuming to know the dynamics of others' relationships are just fucking gross. And it was brought up on the podcast, and I did like how Dominic said how cool she is. She seems really cool. You know, Rhea Ripley licks Dominic's face and like, yo, bro, there's a spider in the garage. So she's obviously cool. She obviously understands. If she's been with Dominic for so long, she's probably been around wrestling a lot and been around the Mysterio family. She knows the deal, you know, and Dominic is now onto his second girlfriend in WWE. He just spent 2 years with Rhea Ripley. Now he's with Liv Morgan. Obviously, these are not real relationships, and his wife is probably fine with everything. So I'm glad that Dominic cleared that up for the relationship inexperienced out there who seem to think that that could be a fucking problem. I think every situation is different, and I think sometimes it can be a problem. Triple H and Stephanie is a good example of that. And I know for a fact that in movies, there has definitely been actors who portray couples in a movie and have chemistry and fall in love in real life. These things can happen. But for the most part, if you're in a trusting relationship, you're going to trust who you're with at the end of the day. But that wasn't even the best part of the podcast. The best part of Dominic's appearance on Impulsive was when Japan got brought up. This has to be seen to be believed. You have to see the interaction because I'm not going to be able to do it justice here just talking about what was said. So Dominic, you know, we all know WWE just got back from a big tour from Japan, right? So Dominic's like, yeah, we just got back from Japan. And he's got this smirk on his face. And Logan's like, yeah, I know. How was it? And he goes, oh man, it was a blast. And he goes, have you guys ever been? And he just starts laughing. So obviously Dominic knows about Logan Paul's history when he was a young douchebag and he went to the suicide forest and all that. And so Dominic mentions this and he goes, have you guys ever been? And he's got this little chuckle, this fucking smirk on his face. And he goes, what? And he goes, wait, can you go? And Logan Paul seemed like super annoyed at this. He's like, Dominic, fuck, yes, I can go to Japan. I just couldn't go on this trip because I had prior obligations or whatever. And Dominic is like, okay, I didn't know if you were like shadow banned or excommunicado or whatever. The whole exchange is just hilarious. And Dominic just sitting there. It's almost like he is a surgeon perfectly performing, you know, a trolling surgery on Logan Paul because just the way he's saying it. He's like, have you ever been? wait, can you go? Just that whole thing was just too funny. And seeing Logan Paul visibly annoyed, like, fuck, Dominic, yes, I can go. I'm like, well, shit, Logan Paul, you should have thought about that before you were a young douchebag, and you went in there and filmed that shit and got yourself in all that hot water. Obviously, it hasn't hurt him that much in his professional career. The man is a huge star, multi-fucking billionaire, owns a water company and does all this shit. So it didn't really hurt him in the long run, but it's still a very embarrassing part of Logan Paul's history and life. And the fact that Dominic brought this up, smirking and laughing at him the whole time, was the funniest thing that I've seen all month long. I loved it. With each passing day, I grow a larger fan of Dominic Mysterio. And I want to go back and find some of my reviews from like 2020 or whenever Dominic started turning up. And it's like, I didn't dislike the kid because I love Ray, and we all knew, we watched Dominic grow up. And when he kind of got in the ring, it was screaming nepotism. He knew what he was doing in there, but he wasn't really offering anything. And I thought there were a lot better talented wrestlers, in the NXT and developmental system and PC that could be in the spot that Dominic had. But man, once he turned and once he got with Rhea Ripley and he grew the hair and he's got a little bit of that Eddie and a little bit of Art Barr in him and a lot less Rey Mysterio, and how great he is at being a heel and his tendies and nuggets, or tendies and ketchup. He is fucking hilarious. And he doesn't even seem like the same performer to me that he was a few years ago when he had the short hair and he just didn't talk and say anything. And he went through a lot in the Thunderdome days, right? He got that initiation by, who was it, Rollins, when he got caned to shit and all that. So the kid's been through it, and he's earned everything he's got here. And I love just his aura, his vibe, his look now. Elizabeth actually wants to dress up as Dominic for WrestleMania next year in Vegas, provided Dominic still has the look that he has. She's going to do the hair and the mustache, get a cow vest. We're going to deck her up. We're going to put the tattoos on her arms, the whole shebang. And so I'm hoping that Dominic still is in the current Dominic form by the time we get to Vegas next year for 41. But if you haven't checked out Dominic's appearance on Impulsive, please watch it and watch that exchange about Japan. You'll piss yourself. It's so funny. Anybody in the chat in the New York City area? WWE's doing their Fanatics Fest right now. They've been advertising this for a couple of months, or I think maybe even as far back as WrestleMania time. And it's basically just like a fan fest. It's just basically a WrestleMania fan fest thing, but it's in New York City, completely away from any pay-per-view. But all the stars are there. Punk was there. I saw him doing something with Rob Gronkowski, and I think Hogan and all the big stars are in town for this. And they've got the deals set up where you can do like wrestler entrances and all that, just fan fest shit. So all that's going on in New York City right now. If any of you guys have attended that, give us some deets in the chat there and let us know how that has been going. And before we get into what we saw last night on SmackDown, we want to take time here in 1 second to pay our respects to Afa the Wild Samoan. But before I do that, let me go back over here to the chat and regroup, see if you guys have anything to say since I've been yapping. You know how I like to yap on these podcasts. Lee, the Lego fan, what was your memories of Afa? Stay tuned. You're about to hear them. Good to see Danny in Oak Park, Stone Cold, Doug Unfunny, anybody else that's said hello since I've been talking here. Welcome. Happy Saturday. Thanks for being here. K-Dog's Kennel, happy to see you, man. Thank you again for name dropping Oakley last week. I am happy to report that Oakley is doing well. Oakley is Kevin's dog, who did have a little cyst removed. And whenever you feel a lump on your pet, it can be scary. Luckily for Oakley, he gonna be just fine. Very happy to hear that. And we have got some of our first 2-year members now chiming in. I've got to do a new members video. I'm working on it, guys. And I've got a big video coming for members only, maybe in a month. And it's a real weird subject. So just stay tuned if you are a channel member. Oh, good to see FRGN in here. What's up, man? No, I don't think they're going to go TVMA. All I think the Netflix switch is going to do is just offer them a little bit of freedom if they have to belt out the word shit here or there, or if the crowd is chanting something awful, they're not going to be edited out. Or, maybe when necessary, they can, maybe use a little more blood or be a little bit more violent if they have a situation that calls for it. All I want is for them not just to do it for the sake of doing it. That's the problem sometimes in AEW with some of their violence. I don't really have a problem with blood at all. And I'm not a snowflake about the blood. Give me blood in wrestling. Cool. Bleed buckets if you want. I just don't need to see blood in every match, blood 4 times in one show, that type of thing. That's when it can come across like you're doing it just to do it. It's got to mean something if you're going to do it. That's my only request, is that WWE doesn't go too crazy with the freedoms they might now have on Netflix. But I don't think they will. They're a machine. Colin Wright, good to see you, my friend. Does Logan regret his stupidity as a young man? Who doesn't? I'm sure Logan Paul does. Put yourself in his situation. Whatever age he was at that time, think about what your mentality was at that age. And then if you had millions of dollars and the ability to travel everywhere and you were an online celebrity, you'd probably do some stupid shit too. I'm not defending Logan Paul, but I can understand how young people do stupid shit. And I am thankful and grateful that I am the age that I am. You have no idea how I get down on my knees every day. And I thank the God that doesn't exist that I did not have a Twitter when I was 15. I would be ashamed of some of the things I would probably write on there. So I understand that when you're young, you do dumb shit. And today's generation now has the potential and possibility for their dumb shit to be recorded. When I did dumb shit, nobody had a video camera around, so I'm safe. But when I was a kid, but not everybody else is that lucky. And when you're young, you do dumb shit, you make mistakes. What's important is that you learn from them. And even though I'm not really a big Logan Paul fan, I think it's pretty safe to say that he learned from that mistake. He recognizes and understands how fucking dumb it was, and he knows it. He's not walking around oblivious like he did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I was innocent. He's not doing that. He knows that he was a dumbass. And he's paying the price to this day for it. So it's all about just learning from your mistakes. That's my belief. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about a very sad wrestling death that we suffered this week. Afa, the Wild Samoan, passed away yesterday at age 81. This comes less than 2 months after Sika passed away, his brother, at the age of 79. The two men, of course, were known as the Wild Samoans. Now, back when Sika passed away, I shared a lot of memories on the podcast about Sika. And I have a few more memories about Sika than I do about Afa, because the Wild Samoans, they were tag team champions when I started watching wrestling. The first time I started actually watching wrestling to watch it, turning it on to watch it, and forming memories, around 82, 83-ish, the Wild Samoans were tag team champions. So they were always like kind of my first intro almost into tag team wrestling and WWF. Because prior to that, my memories are murky. It was all magazines. First memory I ever have of wrestling is seeing Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes wrestle in Madison Square Garden, pictures in a magazine. That was the first memory I have of what pro wrestling was. But watching wrestling, watching it on TV, was about a year or so before Hogan came back to WWF, and the Wild Samoans were on top as a tag team back then. And so I've always had a very deep personal connection to the Wild Samoans because of that. I was a big fan in the 80s of the Islanders tag team. I was a big fan in the 90s of the Head Shrinkers. I've always just loved those tag teams. Those Samoan tag teams have always been just a huge deal in my life as a kid, watching tag team wrestling and watching a lot of these, characters from my earliest memories. And the Wild Samoans were savages. Of course, Afa, he is the brother of Sika. The Sika, of course, is the father of Roman Reigns. So he's the uncle to Roman Reigns. Afa is the father of Samu, one half of the Head Shrinkers, and Afa Jr., who I think was Manu, right? And he's got 5 other kids on top of that. And he's a father-in-law to Gary Albright or something. So Afa, He's a part of that blood. They put that bloodline, right? It was WrestleMania time. It was at that Vegas show, right? They put that whole bloodline family tree. Get a look at that thing, man. And you can just see how far, these branches go. And Afa, he was one of the most important ones, because of, his brother and the kids that these guys would spawn. He was born in Western Samoa Trust Territory. He relocated to San Francisco as a child and remained there, I think, most of his life. He enlisted in the Marines at age 17. And after he did his tour there, he decided to get into wrestling, began training in the late 60s, early 70s, I believe, and had his first match in 1971 after training with Rocky Johnson, who would have been his cousin, and Peter Maivia, who would have been his uncle. Started wrestling, like I said, 1971, and then he started training with his brother Sika, and they wrestled a lot in Stampede. They got some further training from Stu while they were up there as well. They wrestled all throughout the NWA territories in the 1970s and showed up in the WWE early in 1979, winning the tag team titles in 1980, but then they would leave the company. They would go work for Mid-South. They would go work for Crockett Promotions, and they would return to WWE in 1983, and this is where I remember them. My first memories of them are from their second run in 83 when they won the tag team titles, and then they dropped them later in the year to Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson in a very famous match, and one of the earliest, probably actually it is, now that I think about it, because the Wild Samoans were tag team champions when I started watching wrestling, but I don't remember them winning the titles. They won them from Strongbow and whoever the fuck. But the match where they lost them, I think that's the first tag team championship change that I witnessed as a kid, was Atlas and Johnson beating the Wild Samoans. And those were crazy times. The Wild Samoans were also a part of Hulk Hogan's return to the company about a month later at the end of 83 when he came in to help Bob Backlund, who was battling all three of them because Sika got hurt, and they brought in Samu. They brought in Samu, who was Afa's son, one half of the Head Shrinkers, to kind of be a third Samoan there, fill in for Sika when he was hurt and kind of be a three-man Freebird unit. And he was a part of that when Hogan came back into the company and in late 83 there prior to winning the title from the Iron Sheik. But the match against Atlas and Johnson, I think, is my first ever memory of a tag team title change in WWE in 1983. And those are memories that I cherish. I really do. Now, unfortunately, unlike Sika, who would come back in the 80s and have a little bit of a run, he worked with Hogan on Saturday Night's Main Event. He tag teamed with Kamala and had a little bit of a run in the company under the tutelage of Fuji and Kimchi. But Afa never came back for a run like that. Just Sika did. Afa would resurface in 1992 as the manager of the Head Shrinkers. They brought in Fatu and Samu, who I think were working in WCW. They were the SWAT team, the Samoan SWAT team. And so now they come in as the Head Shrinkers, and I was so happy to see them there because I was a big fan of the Islanders. And so when I recognized Afa right away. He's there with the Head Shrinkers. You can tell all these fuckers are related. And when they came in 92, I don't think that I had put together that Samu was the third Samoan from when I was a kid. I don't think I put that together till a couple years later, that was the same guy. So he would be the manager of the Head Shrinkers. The Head Shrinkers would undergo some changes. They would actually win the tag team titles when they joined up with Lou Albano to help them beat, I think, maybe the Quebecers for the titles. It would have been maybe in like 94. They turned face. I loved that version of the Head Shrinkers. I wish that they wouldn't have dropped the titles so quick to Diesel and Shawn the night before SummerSlam in 1994, but it was great to see them win the tag team titles in the WWE, the Head Shrinkers, that is, in 1994. I think my favorite from those days, my favorite memory of Afa was, it's a weird one. So at WrestleMania 10, right, they did the 10-man tag that was scrapped due to time constraints. Reportedly, Shawn and Razor went over in the ladder match. So they had to cut a match out because back in those days, there was no Peacock. You were held to a very strict pay-per-view allotted time. And if you go over that time, you get a Halloween Havoc 1998 situation, and WWE didn't want that to happen to Brett and Yoko. So the 10-man tag had to be cut and scrapped last minute. So the last minute reason that they could find or come up with as to why the tag team match wasn't happening is because the heels can't decide who the captain is going to be, who the team captain is going to be. So they cut backstage for a quick impromptu little segment there with the heels. And it's like the Model and Jeff Jarrett, and I forgot who was even on the team. I know Martel, Jarrett, and probably Head Shrinkers and somebody else. And they're arguing over who the captain is going to be. IRS might have been a part of that, arguing about who the captain is going to be. And then Afa just comes right into frame and he goes, "I'm captain." And just the way he said it, "I'm captain." And he's like, eyes are crossed. Hilarious. He was always gnawing on a bone or a fucking raw chicken. Even when the Wild Samoans as a kid, I liked them because I was a child and I watched them communicate by grunts and growls, and to me, they're talking to each other. Sika and Afa are just grunting, just eating raw fish and making noises. And to me, they're communicating, and they were. And that was one of the funniest things I remember about them. So when Afa actually speaks English, it's like, "I'm captain." I just laugh my ass off. So anyway, rest in peace to Afa. His reach stretched far. Him and Sika, of course, also trained wrestlers at their Samoan training facility in years, after their retirements. And they both went into the Hall of Fame, got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2007, went in together side by side, inducted by their sons, Samu and Rosie, respectively. Rosie, of course, is unfortunately no longer with us. But the Wild Samoans are definitely immortalized as a tag team in WWE history. But of course, I think the bigger story is just that bloodline that stretches so far and is so prominent still to this day, probably more than ever in WWE and all across pro wrestling. So thoughts and love go out to the Anoa'i family for their loss. Unfortunately, Thursday his death was reported a little bit early. I was at work and I saw a few random posts from complete strangers, people that I don't know, saying that Afa had passed away. And I saw a few of them. So I remember I posted on social media. I'm like, I'm seeing some Afa posts, but nobody that I trust has said anything yet. So we'll wait for confirmation. But if this is true, it's pretty sad that we lost both Wild Samoans very close together. Just a couple of minutes after that, Meltzer confirms that Afa had passed away. Meltzer reporting it. I'm like, okay, it must be the real deal. Dave can simply send out a text to somebody who can probably confirm this. So if Dave is tweeting it, it must be true. It was not. Vale Anua'i, Afa's daughter, posted shortly after that he is still fighting and don't believe anything until it comes from the family. And the only thing that annoyed me about that was that the family, in the middle of dealing with losing Afa, because even though he did not pass away, he was passing away, they have to stop and take a break to correct false reports. That's unfortunate. And that's something, with Dave, I think he might have just jumped the gun there. And I don't mind Dave's style of reporting, as long as you have to, like I said before, you have to know that you're reading Dave. Dave watches the show just like we do. He gathers observations just like we do, only he prints his observations. Good example of that is what he just said the other day about Jacob Fatu. He said what they're trying to do is, what they're doing is they're keeping Roman and Jacob Fatu separated for as long as possible. Well, Jacob Fatu attacked Roman Reigns last night on SmackDown. He observed what he thought was happening just like we did. They didn't interact when Roman came back at the PLE, and they haven't interacted yet. So fans naturally are going to make the assumption that they must be trying to keep them away. Dave prints this as it's actually fact, when it's just observation. So I read Dave's work from the perspective of someone who's reading Dave printing his observations. When you read it like that, you have no reason to get your panties all in a bunch like Bischoff does and fly off the rails and become overly obsessed with wrestling journalists and get mad and freak out and yell and scream. Just know what you're reading. That's all you got to do. In this case, though, this was a little bit disappointing that Dave did this. This was not cool. If you're going to report someone's death, you better know 100%. You know, Dave reported what he saw. He saw a bunch of people saying Alpha died, so he reported it. You might want to check that out. There is no reason, there's no benefit, there's no point in trying to be first about something like this. Who cares who's first? The wrestling world lost a legend. The last thing in the world that I'm going to be thinking about is the first person I learned this from. I would like to learn it from the family, but if I learn it through a journalist or through a wrestling website, I don't give a fuck which one says it. What I'm most focused on is that the wrestling world lost a legend, not that so-and-so reported it first. Don't care. So that was disappointing. That is a correct time when you can jump down Dave's throat, you know, because wrestling fans with the wrestling journalist anger up their ass, they're tough to communicate with and reason with. And a lot of times their anger is unjustified. This time with Dave, this was pretty fucked up. Pretty fucked up that Dave jumped the gun like that. And when someone like Dave, with the reach like Dave, posts this, then it spreads even harder. Everybody else that I saw the posts from were people with low follower counts and that nobody knows. They were just posting this. So it was spreading, but not spreading that much. Once Dave got a hold of it and put it out there, now the family's been made aware of it. Oh, everybody thinks my dad died. Now I have to take a break from dealing with this to go on social media and say, no, he's still fighting. Don't believe anything you read until you hear it from us. It's just unfortunate. Just unfortunate. Either way, rest in peace to Afa. A lot of memories of that guy. And another portion of my childhood gone. There's not many portions that are still walking around living, to be honest with you. It's pretty dang sad. But rest in peace to Afa, and condolences out to the entire Anoa'i family. And a big part of that bloodline was very busy last night on SmackDown, opening and closing the show. Nia Jax was being thrown a victory party last night by Tiffany Stratton. If you can't tell, we have moved on to last night's SmackDown results. And the show opened up with the big Nia Jax victory celebration. She came out there looking obnoxious. So she's got the big crown, big white outfit. She comes in the ring. She's got her belt. Tiffany is in there along with Pretty Deadly. And Nia Jax basically tells, after cutting a little promo about how great she is, walks over to Tiffany and says, you should bow down. I want you to bow down. She goes, you want me to bow down? She goes, yeah, bow down to me. Everybody's got to bow to her. And Tiffany's like, okay, I will. I'm so glad we're on the same page because I'm totally going to bow down to you. But first, I brought Pretty Deadly here because they're going to perform a song for you. They're going to do a little performance number. And holy shit, it was bad. So bad. So fucking bad. I wouldn't even mind something like this if it was maybe a little bit shorter, or if it only went for about 30 seconds and then Nia Jax beat the crap out of both of them and gave them both a double annihilator and threw them out of the ring. That might have been a little bit more enjoyable, but this entire performance in this song and this dance was really bad. Really bad. And I was hoping that Nia would attack them, but she didn't. Instead, during the song, Michin runs in with a kendo stick. I think it was a kendo stick, or it was a chair. I don't know what she had, but she runs in and attacks Nia Jax. So I like this. Nia Jax needs an opponent to beat in her first title defense. Michin is a perfect person for that because she deserves to get... I'm hoping this is going to be a PLE match. I'm hoping it's going to be a Bash in Berlin match because Ripley is in a mixed tag, so if you want to have a women's title defended, it's going to have to be this one. And I'm hoping that she gets a shot in Berlin. Michin gets a good PLE championship match, championship payday. Ultimately, she's not going to win, but I'm happy that she is getting the opportunity because I like her. And when I saw her last night, the only thing I could think about is what a lucky man Keith Lee is. But I did like that, and it does look like Nia Jax will be facing Michin first. Tiffany Stratton, of course. Nia Jax wanting her to bow down. She never did she? She never did bow down to Nia Jax. Never got it done. So that's going to be brought back up again at some point. And you have to wonder, you know, if Tiffany is going to cash in on Nia Jax or if she's going to be cashing in later on down the road after Nia Jax has her run and a babyface is holding the title. I feel like you can take your time with Tiffany. There's no reason to rush it. I'm fine with her holding that briefcase into 2025 if that's what they choose to do. Another great match last night we saw on SmackDown between Carmelo Hayes and Andrade. This is their third encounter. Andrade is up 2-0 in these encounters, and they have got a shit ton of chemistry. These matches are so good, so fun. And finally, Carmelo Hayes gets the win here, pins Andrade in a roll-up. He talked a little smack to him after the match. We got a post-match brawl. So it sounds like with this issue no closer to conclusion, that we could get some sort of best of series here. And I don't know if they did that, if they would count the matches they've already had, or if they would start from scratch, if they want to start a best of 7 now, or if they're in the midst of a best of 7, I don't know. But I'm liking the little story between the two on TV and the fact that they have two people, neither are champions, and they're having this fun competition on television, and this little feud and angle now, I think has been a fun part of SmackDown, and every match these two have had has been great. So we'll see. I don't know if it's really Bash in Berlin worthy to chuck these guys to do another one there. I doubt it. I think everything that happens between these two guys is going to be conducted largely on SmackDown, but it does make you wonder if they are setting up for maybe a best of 7. And I can't think of a better two guys to do a best of 7. What was the last best of 7 in WWE? Cesaro and Sheamus was the last one I remember, but I feel like there's got to be one since then. So let me know in the chat if I've forgotten about any. But we're overdue, I think. Unless we just had one last year that I've forgotten about, which definitely is possible. I feel like we're overdue for a good old-fashioned best of 7 series, and I can't think of two better guys to do it with than Carmelo and Andrade. The Street Profits also had a fucking banger of a match with DIY last night. This was a number 1 contenders match. Street Profits got the win. They will now receive a future tag team title shot, and that's going to be a match against the Bloodline. Not sure if that's going to be at Bash in Berlin or if they're saving this one. We're going to talk about the Bash in Berlin card here in a minute. We know Triple H likes his small cards, so I feel like there's already enough matches on this thing, or likely for this thing, so we'll have to see. Kevin Owens had a match against Grayson Waller last night, and he won after hitting the stunner, but not pinning Waller, picking him up after the stunner and hitting him with the pop-up powerbomb instead for the win. Now, after the match, Austin Theory hit the ring. The two started attacking Kevin Owens, and that's when Cody Rhodes showed up with the steel chairs to make the save. And there has been some teases and some subtleties here with Kevin Owens that he might be going back to his heel persona or his prize fighter persona. And they've been teasing that ever since he denied a championship match. Wasn't that weird to you guys? You know, I mean, he's like, no, Cody, thank you for the title shot, but I don't deserve it. I've been losing. I don't deserve it. Would heel Kevin Owens ever do that? Hell no. He'd take any opportunity he could get. Kevin Owens should feel wronged for all the times he had Roman beat and should have won the title for a second time, since it's been 8 years since he won the Universal title. You would think that he would be bitter about that, and he would jump at any opportunity to be a world champion again, because he feels like he's always deserved it. So the fact that he backed off of that, and then they had to kind of do that runaround to make the match happen, now he seems like he's embracing it a little bit more, getting a little bit more aggressive, even had that chair in his hand and maybe gave Cody a look last night like, well, I could do this if I wanted to. And if he does adopt and return to that prize fighter gimmick, and we get prize fighter KO versus Cody Rhodes at Bash in Berlin, that can be a lot of fun. And if Kevin Owens goes full-blown heel, which I'm feeling like he might, I'm not sure if he will get that done before Bash in Berlin or after. It feels like something that would happen after Bash in Berlin. He can then turn heel, and hell, maybe you set up a rematch then at Bad Blood in October between these two guys, and their issue, continues a little bit further. I think it would be great if Kevin Owens lost to Cody, turned heel, and then got moved to Monday Night Raw in some big trade, just a new change of scenery for Kevin Owens and a new attitude, even though he's done that a lot of times over the years, jumping from Raw to SmackDown, heel and babyface. One more time here again in 2024 could be fun. So it feels like they are definitely setting up for Owens to turn heel. And if he does, I'm honestly fine with that. If that's the direction they go in, because there's a lot of baby faces, a lot of over baby faces right now in the company, including the one that was called out by Solo Sikoa in the main event. So we've got the Bloodline out there, Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga. It's just them. And Solo calls out the original tribal chief. He tells Tama Tonga to leave the ring and let him do this on his own. Roman Reigns comes out. And I got to say, what are y'all's thoughts on his new theme music? It's way too long, the intro. I like the theme music itself. Like it sounds very epic. It's got a very superhero type of vibe to it. But the intro alone is like a minute long. Before it gets to the part where the piano key, dun, 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 a minute goes by. So like there's no explosive part in the song where when it hits and he comes through the crowd and the crowd explodes. They exploded for him last night. But the music is just hard in the intro. The intro is long and with a lot of different parts. And I don't really love it. I feel like when Roman Reigns wins a match, the song is going to kick in after the victory at the 55-second mark. Right about a minute in when the good stuff starts. But Roman is going to be all the way almost to the ring by the time, the chorus of the song kicks in. It's just way too long. Way, way, way too long. So I feel like they need to simplify that or something, because I don't really love... it's like I like the song, but I don't like it for a wrestler's entrance. It just takes way too long to get to it. It's too much bullshit in the beginning, and we just don't need all of that. We had 25 years, 30 years of that with The Undertaker, these long-ass entrances. We don't need, a minute-long intro to a song. It's just too much. So anyway, Roman comes out. He's got a song. He's in the aisleway. He gets in the ring, and he kicks Solo's ass. Beats the shit out of him very easily. Superman punch. Solo retreats. Roman follows him to the outside. Tama Tonga then attacks against the orders of Solo. He didn't want any help, but Tama then attacks Roman Reigns and then throws Roman outside of the ring. And Roman then turns the tables on... Roman throws Tama outside of the ring, excuse me. In comes Tama. Roman starts kicking his ass too, throws him on the outside of the ring, goes after him, and that's where Solo attacks Roman, throws him back in the ring. That's when Roman hits the Superman punch. I got this all backwards. So Roman hit the Superman punch at the end, knocks down Solo. Tama is out, and right there, laying on the mat, is the Ula Fala. He picks it up, and he picks it up, and you can just see like the strength entering his body, and he just puts it on. And he's got this just look of relief, like I've finally retrieved my property. But he would only retrieve it for a couple of seconds. That's when Jacob Fatu hit the ring, nails Roman Reigns with a super kick, and then Jacob and Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa bring Roman Reigns to the outside of the ring and triple powerbomb him through the table, allowing Solo to retrieve and retain the Ula Fala as the tribal chief right now. So this is interesting how on SmackDown we've got this feud over the Ula Fala. On Raw, we got a feud over a bracelet. I like when wrestling can make things other than championships important. And in some cases, maybe even more important than the championship. Right now, Roman Reigns' main focus as a character is to reclaim his seat as the head of the table, to be the true tribal chief, and to be the one and only possessor of the Ula Fala. And that's what they're going to be feuding over. And I have to wonder how far they take this, because you got to think about the next possibly 2 WrestleManias. Are we looking at, what are we looking at here with Roman and Solo Sikoa? I feel like that's not going to be a match at Bash in Berlin. It could be, but I feel like that's almost too quick. I feel like there's already a lot of matches on that card. So they could be saving something for Bad Blood. I'm not really sure when the Roman and Solo Sikoa match is going to happen. It feels like it's got to be Bad Blood, and that will lead to then the Bloodline Civil War at War Games. And then when you go into WrestleMania next year, you have to wonder if Roman Reigns is going to be wrestling for the championship or if he's going to be wrestling for the Ula Fala. And what I would like to see is actually, we've talked about this, maybe The Rock being the one that's pulling the strings of the new bloodline, of the bad bloodline. It's The Rock really pulling the strings here. I think that's a real, actual, likely possibility of being the case. And if that is the case, I would have The Rock win the Rumble. I would have The Rock win the Royal Rumble and face Cody at WrestleMania. And then you could, I don't know how you drag it this far. There's no way you can drag Roman and Solo to Mania. And I don't even know if fans would want that match at WrestleMania, Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. But if you did that match for the Ula Fala and then Roman Reigns wins it, and then the following year, it's Rock and Roman for the Ula Fala. Or maybe Rock gains possession of the Ula Fala for a while when he's a heel. Solo turns it over to him. And then next year at WrestleMania, it's Roman and Rock, not for the championship, but for the Ula Fala. Something like that is what they're trying to do, I guess. But I like that you've got not only possibilities for this year's WrestleMania 41, but next year's at 42, if you really want to stretch stuff out. So in terms of Roman and Solo in the immediate future, I don't feel like they're going to add this match to Bash in Berlin. So it feels like it's going to have to be a Bad Blood thing. Roman is going to want Solo one-on-one. So will Roman be on SmackDown next week, or is he going to take a week off, or is he going to be absent until SmackDown starts on the 13th on USA? Don't really know. Based on the outcome of last night's SmackDown, how Roman was put down, you would think he would be back next week on SmackDown looking for revenge, but we're not really sure. So I don't know when that match is going to happen and when they're going to book it, but it's going to have to be before Survivor Series. So Bad Blood feels like the likely spot. Rock and Roman for War Games, like against each other? No, War Games, you got to do the Bloodline Civil War. Now, Rock and Roman could be on opposite sides of that, but I think it would be more fun if The Rock wasn't actually in the ring, but revealed at the end of War Games as the man pulling the strings. That would be a great closing angle to do at War Games this year. So lots to think about and speculate on, but the Bloodline stuff, now that Roman is back, and now that we saw Jacob Fatu, who apparently has gotten over or is getting better because he was physical and, he did a lot of damage to Roman last night. I'm glad that his injury at SummerSlam wasn't that bad. He was in a walking boot after diving onto Cody Rhodes like that. So the fact that he's back in the ring is awesome, because he's going to be a major factor, a lot like Solo was a factor in the first Bloodline. I think Jacob's going to be a lot like this for the new Bloodline, and some of the dissension we could see in the future between Jacob and Solo. That's going to be good stuff. So here's how Bash at Berlin is looking. We've got Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, Gunther versus Randy Orton, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley versus Dominic and Liv Morgan in a mixed tag match, and that's all WWE.com has advertised for the pay-per-view so far. But based on what we saw last Monday on Raw, we're going to get CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre in a strap match, most likely. Based on what we saw last night on SmackDown, we're going to get Nia Jax and Michin. Also last night on SmackDown, LA Knight came out to the stage and cut a little mini promo there on Santos Escobar. I was under the assumption that's going to be a U.S. title match at Bash in Berlin, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's just a TV match coming up. And we might also get a women's tag team championship match. I saw a clip yesterday on social media of Jade Cargill being a guest on, I forgot who it was. I forgot whose YouTube channel or podcast she was a guest on, but she might have spoiled something. She said something like, oh, we're going to win the titles back. We're going to win our belts back at the PLE. Or she kind of let something slip that there's plans for her and Bianca to win back the titles, and they might be getting a tag title match at Bash in Berlin, unless she means Bad Blood. But if those matches take place, all of them, you're looking at 7 matches, and I feel like that's 1 or 2 matches too many. So that LA Knight and Santos match might not be there. Might be on SmackDown. All right. Oh, yeah. Good point, Victor. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about Crown Jewel. There's another one coming up. November 2nd is the date. That could be it. They might do it there. Something's going to have to happen there. They give Saudi Arabia pretty big shows these days, so you feel like some major match has got to go down there. Yeah, we will. Thank you, Victor. LA Knight and Santos is happening next week on SmackDown, not Bash in Berlin. Okay, so let's scrap that one. So yeah, if you do the other ones, then you're looking at 6 matches if you do Punk and Drew, Nia and Michin, and you do a women's tag team title match. I don't think Braun Breaker will have enough time to put an IC match together for this thing. Most likely he will not. And you're probably looking at 5 match card, maybe 6 at the most for Bash in Berlin, unless they surprise us with something else. We will see. But now switching gears back to AEW, I want to mention a couple of things about this past week's Dynamite. The last Dynamite here in the States before they head over to the UK for Dynamite next week and All In. And they did a lot of setup here for the show. There was a lot of for the pay-per-view. There was a lot of video packages on Dynamite on Wednesday, which I did not hate, because they did a good job, telling these stories. And I'm glad that they were focused on some of these stories, getting them, set and ready as best they can for All In. It feels like there's not as much enthusiasm and as excitement surrounding this year's All In as there was last year. But there are things about this year's All In that I do like better. And one of those things is that they took a lot more time to book some of these matches. It felt like last year they waited till the very end to throw the card at us. And this time, they've had a lot of these matches announced for a while, and they've been telling a lot of these stories for a while. Now, one thing that's been going on in the company that's been a little bit head-scratching is how the Elite seems to now be taking a bit of a back seat to the other stories. At one point, it looked like they were the top story going in the company, and Okada being with them now. And then maybe it was after whenever it was Blood and Guts or whenever the last match was, that I feel like they just lost some steam or momentum, and they've largely kind of been in the background and not much of a factor on the shows lately. And then the Young Bucks, who won the tag team titles back in like April and have not defended them since, finally put the titles on the line against the Acclaimed, a team who they owe a title match to. Finally did that on Wednesday night, and it was a terrible fucking match. They did the stupid finish. There was a ref bump at the end. Matt Jackson went out to get a steel chair to use it, but FTR ran in to stop them. Then that causes a big disqualification and a big schmoz, which means they have rebooked another match on Collision tonight between FTR and the Acclaimed. The winner of this will get a tag team title shot against the Bucks at All In. I feel like we're going to do another schmoz, and we're going to get a triple threat at All In is what I feel like they're going to do tonight. I'll run through that Collision card here in just a second, because Collision goes live here in about 45 minutes. Also on Wednesday, Mercedes Moné defeated Hikaru Shida. This was a pretty good match and a good setup for the finish. It's just Mercedes' finisher, the moneymaker. I just don't love it. The match between the two was really good. And then the vicious kick from Camille. Hikaru Shida's on the outside of the ring, and Camille just comes in with a vicious super kick with like a cowboy boot right to the face of Hikaru Shida. She throws her in the ring, and Mercedes is able to hit her moneymaker finisher for the win. And the finisher just looks like shit. I just don't like it. It just doesn't look good. I like Mercedes. She's a good wrestler. She needs a new finisher. I would just stick with the bank statement or whatever, or something else, because that thing feels like it has like a 10% success rate. I've seen her hit 1 or 2 of those that have looked pretty good. But I think Stephanie Vaquer actually took it pretty good at Forbidden Door. But most of the time, it looks like shit. When she debuted it in Japan against Kairi Sane, it looked like shit. So get a new finisher, girl. Anyway, after the match, Britt Baker's music hits. So Camille jumps out of the ring to maybe head off Britt at the aisleway, and she sees a fan in the crowd wearing a mask, just like Britt was doing a couple of weeks ago. So she yanks over the fan, starts beating the hell out of the fan, and then you see Britt Baker, who might have missed her cue or something because her music is hitting, and the camera is like following Britt through the crowd onto the apron, and then she gets on the apron and she's fucking with her glove. And I'm like, what? Get in the damn ring and start brawling already. Finally, she does. She gets in there. She mixes it up with Mercedes. She drops her down, goes for the lockjaw, but Camille is able to get in there and pull Mercedes out of dodge. And we will see how the match goes at All In. You know, on paper, this is a dream match for me. I was a big Britt Baker fan in the early days of AEW, and I've always liked Sasha, a.k.a. Mercedes. But with everything surrounding Britt, and the fact that she just does not seem like she's well-liked, and that's disappointing, because I like Britt Baker, I like her character, I like the DMD, I like her presentation, I like her look, I think she's good in the ring, I love her finisher, I love her theme music. I love that she has a dental practice that she, still occasionally works at, or she did up until recently. But you hear about a lot of stories about her. There's a lot of talent that she does not get along with. And much like CM Punk, at what point do you stop blaming all the other talent and you start looking at the actual person here? And I've met Britt Baker. She is a goddamn sweetheart. So I don't know why all these people don't get along with her or what her attitude or demeanor is like backstage, but wrestling is a very competitive environment to be in. And when you are the cornerstone or the centerpiece of a division and you feel that grip loosening, I think people tend to get a little bit protective and a little bit competitive. That's when animosity happens and bad feelings and jealousy and issues and jealousy over TV time and all those things start rearing its ugly head. That can be a problem. And it just seems like Britt has issues with enough people where you have to start wondering if this might be a Britt problem. But even if she didn't have the negative story, even if she didn't have the suspension that she just served for her conduct due to the MJF and Alicia 2 thing, even if that wasn't going on, I'm not sure if she's beaten Mercedes for the title here. So I think Mercedes is going to win this match. She has Camille with her. Don't forget, Camille's Diesel. Mercedes is Sean. There's nothing wrong with this package, with this setup between the two. I think it was Eric Bischoff or something posted something like, "This is not the way you should use Camille." I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's exactly the way you should use Camille. Have you ever heard of China, Sid, Diesel? How many other heaters or muscle men or bodyguards have we seen as a way to get a large or intimidating wrestler introduced to the audience? It's a very standard, typical way to do it. Not weird at all. Claiming that it is bad faith. Just bad faith, hate, and nonsense. It's all it is. I like Camille with Mercedes. I think this is a good start for her. It's not going to be what Camille's going to do. Look at what Wardlow, being MJF's bodyguard, did for him. Now, granted, AEW fucked that up, but it still got Wardlow very over. So you can do the same thing with Camille here, essentially. And eventually, you're going to get to the Camille and Mercedes match. Eventually, Mercedes is going to start not only taking Camille for granted, but start abusing Camille. And then at some point, she's going to slap her and Camille's going to fucking kill her. That's the way it goes. That's the way these all go. So it's not weird at all the way how they've chosen to introduce Camille to the AEW audience. Pretty standard stuff. Something that I probably would have also done if I was the booker. So with Camille there, you would think that Mercedes has got to be the odds-on favorite to walk out of Wembley with the championship. I would not take the TBS title off of her yet, especially to Britt Baker, who's got so much kind of negativity surrounding her name right now. Also on Dynamite this past week, Jack Perry attacked Darby Allin backstage, lowered the garage door on him. Didn't Benoit and Jericho do that back in the day? He was like bleeding. Who did that on WWE? I always thought that spot was great. And as the security is dragging Jack Perry away, he's looking in the camera saying, "I want you in a coffin match at All In." And I loved the coffin match last year. It was this is going to be a fun pay-per-view to watch next week together, guys. It really is. So now we're going to get Jack Perry and Darby Allin in a coffin match. And I'm guessing it will be for the championship, right? Right? I think it will be. I've got it in my notes down below on the card here. So coffin match looks like a lot of fun. And then as it relates to Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland, of course, have got their big championship match at All In. And they have really been leaning into that this might be it for Danielson. They played the beautiful video package set to Good Riddance by Green Day on Wednesday. And it's a good thing Tony Khan owns the Ring of Honor video library, because if he didn't, I don't know what kind of footage you would use for this video package. You would only be able to use AEW stuff. It would have been great if they could put WWE stuff in there too, but unfortunately they're not allowed to. But a very, very nice, tearful video package chronicling the career of Bryan Danielson and what the match with Swerve Strickland at All In means to him. Now, in the main event of Dynamite, Swerve defeated Wheeler Yuta, just beat the shit out of him until the referee stopped the match. He kept beating on Yuta until Danielson jumped in the ring to stop. Swerve then kind of retreats and gets on the mic and talks a crazy amount of shit to Danielson and said, your family is going to be there at ringside and they're going to watch me not only retire you, but I'm going to cripple you. And this felt like a heel turn. It felt like Swerve. Like, is Swerve a heel now? But I think Swerve is just being Swerve. Swerve has proven time and time again that when it comes to important matches, he's going to do whatever he has to do to win and use any tactics necessary. This is a man that has no problem breaking into your home and standing over the crib of your infant daughter. He does not care, heel or not, face or not. And so I think that was him just reminding Danielson of how few fucks he gives and how he's going to do everything he can to end the career of Bryan Danielson. And think about what that would look like on Swerve Strickland's resume, being the guy to retire Danielson. And then after Swerve is done, Danielson continues to check on Wheeler Yuta. Swerve then comes back to the ring and house calls Bryan Danielson in the head from behind to close the show as Nana dances with the title and Danielson lays there unconscious. It was a great finish and a great illustration of the lengths that Swerve Strickland will take this to in order to get the win. But at the end of the day, Danielson, one of the things he said about his retirement that I think is kind of a spoiler here is that if he retires, it is a full-blown retirement. He will retire 100%. He will not come back. I can't see him being done for good. I just can't. And I feel like because of that, he's going to win. I think Tony Khan is going to give Bryan Danielson the main event championship victory in Wembley Stadium in front of his family and put the title on him. And that's something I wanted him to do like a year ago when CM Punk left. I was hoping that they would just belt up Danielson because I feel like he's the best guy to carry the title right now. And, right at the end of his run here, winning the championship, I've always wanted that for AEW as well. I wanted AEW to be able to have Danielson in their championship title history. He's a good looking name to have in there. And I think this is going to be it. And he's going to win. And I think that Swerve could totally win the title back, perhaps at All Out or something like that. But I just don't see Danielson retiring at All In. Therefore, I think he's actually going to win the championship. So here's what we have on the card right now for All In. Title versus career match, Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson. We've got Toni Storm versus Mariah May, and I feel like Toni Storm is probably going to retain as well. We have MJF versus Will Ospreay, Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker, Jack Perry versus Darby Allin in a coffin match for the TNT title. We've got the Patriarchy versus the Bang Bang Gang or House of Black. We still don't know because Christian fucked up the match last week when he was the special guest referee on Collision, so we don't know what that match is going to be yet. Chris Jericho taking on Hook for the FTW title, and if Hook loses, he can never challenge for the F2W title again. We've got the Casino Gauntlet match for a future AEW title shot. Orange Cassidy is the first guy to qualify for that, but there's going to be a few more. And on the 0 hour, we got Willow and Tomohiro Ishii teaming up to take on Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. So that should be all kinds of fun. Tonight on Collision, half an hour from now, here's what we got. FTR versus the Acclaimed. The winner gets the tag team title shot at All In against the Young Bucks. We've got the Undisputed Kingdom versus Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes. We have, and that's for the Ring of Honor tag team titles, I believe. We've got Britt Baker taking on Harley Cameron. We've got Jack Perry in action, and we're going to hear from Eddie Kingston. That is what's on tap tonight for Collision. Last night on Rampage, Toni Storm was hilarious. She came out to give Saraya a birthday present. Now, Saraya's birthday was yesterday, and they did a little in-ring thing for her, and Toni Storm came out and says that Saraya has turned into the pastiest pile of titties she's ever seen, or something like that. Hilarious line there. And she said that next week on Dynamite, she will face Saraya. So it's going to be Toni Storm versus Saraya one-on-one on Wednesday. If Saraya can beat Toni Storm claims that Saraya will be able to get a match at All In. Saraya won the championship there last year, and she's been actively trying to secure a match for the card. What it looks like they're going to do is have her get that match at All In and Jamie Hayter come back to kick her ass. I hope that's what they do. I hope we get Jamie Hayter returning at Wembley Stadium, and I hope we get Ricochet on the card as well, last minute. I don't know how, but I would love like Ricochet versus Pac or something like that to be added to All In. So I'm hoping that we might see Ricochet on Dynamite this week in Cardiff. That would be really cool. Otherwise, I guess they're waiting until after All In, unless he shows up at All In. Maybe he just shows up. Maybe Tony Khan comes out to the ring and announces the new signee, and he just waves to the fans. But I'd like to see him have a match. That's what I'd like to see. So anyway, it's a week away, and All In is looking pretty fun. I can't wait to watch it with you guys next week. All right, I got just a couple of minutes left, and then I got to bail out of here because I have to go to work. But let me knock out some super chats here. Make sure I've got them all. I think the next one up was from Colin. Colin Wright's got 5 more from us. Thank you so much, dude. Hey, Greg, did you see Alpha Jr.'s post on Facebook? Please stop using my father as a way to get yourself over. Alpha, no, I don't even know what that even means, to be honest. Stop using his father to get himself over, to get yourself over. I don't know how anyone's doing that. We here on the podcast love Alpha. I have fond memories of him and watching him wrestle, and I wanted to pay my respects to him. So I'm not in any way using him to get myself over. Whoever he's referring to, I don't know. Grief will make you say and do weird things. The family's grieving right now, so if they want to lash out on social media, it's one of the stages of grief, I guess. Rodrigo's got $2 for us. Jim Cornette says, not the way to book Camille in AEW. Well, Jim Cornette doesn't think they do anything right, but it's bad faith. It's bad faith to say that. It's bad faith to pretend that what they're doing with Camille doesn't make sense. It's only what they've done with every single fucking big guy or girl throughout the history of goddamn wrestling. It's so silly to think this when you got such a stick up your ass about a company. You just say shit. Yeah, it's the very typical way to bring in a large heater. I like it. I got no problem with it. They're just making her Wardlow. Hopefully, they will not make the same mistakes with Camille that they made with Wardlow, because AEW definitely makes mistakes in that regard. But in terms of how they've brought her in, seems pretty typical to me. I don't know what everybody is complaining about. Grand Slam is coming up. That's a good point, too. I forgot about that show. There's going to be a big one there. That's going to be a big card. All sports are scripted. I'm going to be doing my predictions on Thursday, but I think I'm predicting Toni Storm to retain. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Sorry. Let me take a sip of water here before I bail out. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for being here this afternoon. I am running out of time. I got to bail out and go to that other job of mine and pay some bills. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night. We're going to be watching WCW Road Wild 1997. We'll be here on Monday as well for a Raw review. And then 1 week from today, we'll be back for the podcast. This coming Thursday, I'll have predictions up. And then 1 week from tomorrow, we're going to be here watching AEW All In together. And I will post the link to that All In watch along in the next day or two. So keep a lookout for that. I'll go ahead and post that really early this week so you guys can grab it and save it. And next week should be a lot of fun. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will catch you tomorrow night for Road Wild. Bring your leathers. Peace.